Hey, Cookies here. This is my Dragonflight Season 1 Mythic Plus guide for Mistweaver Monk. Before we get started, I am going to go over a couple resources because YouTube videos are prone to being a bit misleading as time goes on throughout the season. Things change, new builds come up, people start doing other things, so YouTube videos become irrelevant very quickly. So after you've watched this video, make sure you go check out these resources. The first one I'm going to talk about is sub creation. I feel like this is the most up-to-date resource always because it takes information from ongoing keys and tells you what people are using. This will be helpful for things like trinkets, gear that people are wearing, rings, enchants, all that kind of stuff. So make sure you check this out. And then other than this, we have Questionably Epic, which is a place where articles are written about the game, about healers. Specifically, it's mostly aimed towards Mistweavers and Resto Druids. So this is a great place to check like the Dragonflight trinkets, for instance. There's an article on them, so that'll be a really good start on the trinkets. I'll also have a video up on that by the time that the game releases. And then lastly is Megaset's YouTube channel. She is specifically a Mistweaver monk content creator. Super awesome, streams a lot, makes a lot of informational videos that are super, super good. So please go check out her channel. And then the other thing is going to be this spreadsheet that Megaset is specifically making, which will have up-to-date talents for like every single dungeon and difficulty. And that's why the talent build that I go over, I'm not necessarily going to go over what like the specific build you should use is, but instead I'm going to go over key talents that you should pretty much be taking no matter what. And then you can kind of work the rest out for yourself, or you can look at other resources like Megaset has that spreadsheet going on that'll help you pick your other talents. But these ones are like universally always used and always very good. So this is what you want to start with talents. So the first one in the spec tree, which is the Mistweaver specific tree over here on the right side, is going to be Feline Stomp. You're going to always want this. And the only reason I don't have further points in, just for people who are curious, is because this is the pre-patch, so there's some talents that are going to be missing, but the ones that are key and very important, I'll be talking about here anyways. So Feline Stomp, then we have Ancient Teachings, then we have Rising Mist, which will be right down here. I don't have it currently. And then lastly, we have Teachings of the Monastery. Those are your 4 talents that you're pretty much always going to want on the Mistweaver side of the tree. So make sure you have those. Then on the class specific tree, there's not really anything that's crazy important as far as like the capstones down here or anything like this. So instead, I'm just going to talk about the few that like you definitely want to make sure that you might be able to miss because they are just labeled as like smaller, irrelevant talents, but really they do matter a lot, which is going to be Fast Feet, Improved Vivify, and Rising Sun Kick. You're going to want to make sure you have those because those, without these, the class is going to feel very, very, very bad. So make sure you take those 3. And then other than that, like I said, use the resources or go through the talent tree and you can kind of pick and choose, move around the builds. Feel free to experiment. It's the start of an expansion. Don't feel this. You definitely should feel encouraged to experiment and try things. So those are the key talents. You can start with those and then work your way around that. So next up, we're going to talk about stats. As with most healers, you're going to go for item level first. Then you can focus on haste, and then you can pretty much focus on anything after that. So because I say you can focus on anything, I'm going to explain each stat and where it's beneficial and where you may not want it. So Mastery starting off is the best healing stat that you can get. So if you feel like you need more healing, build Mastery, but you get 0 damage value out of it. So if you're trying to do more damage in keys, you're not going to want Mastery. Critical Strike is a very good healing stat, and it's also a good damage stat. So this is generally what most people go for in pretty high keys. Unless there's a very specific healing requirement, then Mastery is more sought after. And then lastly, we have Versatility, which is an okay healing stat, and it's a pretty good damage stat, and it also gives us some added survivability. So it's really nice for higher keys or when our gear is really low and we're trying to push ourselves to get a little bit further in terms of character progression. So really, if it seems too complicated to pick and choose between those 3, like I said, just go for item level, then get some haste, then don't worry about the rest. Okay, so next we're going to talk about our healing rotation. It's actually quite simple, similar to the beginner's guide that I talked about, but this is going to be more focused towards Mythic Plus. So we have our upkeep spells. That's the first thing that we always want to make sure we're doing, is managing our upkeep spells. So this includes Renewing Mist, keeping this on cooldown as much as possible. Then Ancient Teachings, which is activated by pressing Essence Font. We can even cancel it early if we want to. You don't have to channel all of Essence Font if you don't want to. And then lastly, Feline Stomp. So keeping a Feline Stomp on the mobs that we're currently fighting is really important. And then pressing Renewing Mist on cooldown, and then keeping Ancient Teachings going. So keeping track of how long your Ancient Teachings buffs last. That way when it's getting low, you can then press another Essence Font and get it rolling again. So after our upkeep spells, we then have Rising Sun Kick. We're going to want to keep this on cooldown. It is a damage spell, but it does a lot of healing when we're talented into Rising Mist. So keeping it on cooldown will be very beneficial for us. Then after we press Rising Kick, after that, it's pretty much just maintaining those upkeep spells, and then if we need to do additional healing to anybody, and those upkeep spells and Rising Sun Kick aren't doing enough, then we start pressing things like Vivify and Enveloping Mist. You should generally default to spamming Vivify, and then if someone needs, like if there's one target that specifically needs a lot of healing, that's when you put Enveloping Mist into them. So you'll be using Enveloping Mist a lot on the tank, or players who get targeted by specific abilities or debuffs that need lots of healing over, a set amount of time. So just a quick recap again: upkeep spells, Renewing Mist, Ancient Teachings, Feline Stomp. Then Rising Sun Kick. Then press Vivify and Enveloping Mist as we need for more healing. That's the healing rotation. Then for the damage rotation, it's keeping Rising Sun Kick on cooldown since that's our highest damage ability. And then in single target scenarios, we're going to be pressing Tiger Palm and Blackout Kick, which the way we do this is you can track your Teachings of the Monastery buff that you'll have. And then once it's at 3 stacks, that's when you want to press Blackout Kick. But you want to make sure that Rising Sun Kick is on cooldown first. So as you can see here, I have Rising Sun Kick available. So I'm going to use that first. Now I'm going to Blackout Kick because I have 3 stacks of Teachings of the Monastery. And what that does is it has a chance to reset Rising Sun Kick. As you can see there, it went back off cooldown. And then now while we're waiting for Rising Sun Kick, we just Tiger Palm until we have 3 stacks. And then again, Blackout Kick. And now Rising Sun Kick back off, so I'm going to use that first, and then I'll Blackout Kick. Didn't get a reset, so we just go back to doing the same thing. And then if there's like 3 or more targets, you generally would be pressing Spinning Crane Kick instead. Just spamming that as filler in between Rising Sun Kick. So it would just be Rising Sun Kick, spam Spinning Crane Kick if you're in AoE. Then on single target, you're pressing Tiger Palm and Blackout Kick. Cool. So now we're going to talk about a little bit of our spell usage. The first thing is Chi-Ji. This is going to be one of our major cooldowns, and with certain builds, they're not all going to use this, but you can reduce it to a 1-minute cooldown instead of a 3-minute cooldown, and this will be pretty much without because we're not going to have our Venthyr ability anymore. As you can see here, this is during the pre-patch, so I still have my Venthyr ability. We're not going to have this anymore in Dragonflight. So our only real healing cooldown is Chi-Ji. Revival isn't that strong of a healing cooldown, so we shouldn't rely on it too heavily. So Chi-Ji becomes our pretty much primary healing cooldown. So having it to 1 minute is really nice for a lot of dungeons. So how do we actually use Chi-Ji? We press Chi-Ji and then he doesn't really do anything, right? He just kind of stands here. So the idea, to break it down as simply as possible, is whenever you have Chi-Ji out, you just want to be spamming Enveloping Mist over and over. That's the main idea with it. That's if you don't mind about your mana. If you care about your mana and you're trying to be, like resourceful with your mana and your various resources and stuff like that, and you don't want to just drain through your mana and heal as much as possible, or you don't want to overheal because that's what will happen if you spam Enveloping Mist, then what you do is when you press Chi-Ji, you should be doing your regular rotation of pressing things like Spinning Crane Kick, Rising Sun Kick. You just go back and follow the damage rotation. You should just be doing that, and then you'll be getting stacks of a buff that let you instant cast Enveloping Mist. So it's basically, I'll show you here. So we're going to press Chi-Ji, and he is a shorter duration, so that's something that you will be wanting to be careful of. So we press Chi-Ji, Rising Sun Kick, then we Blackout Kick, and now I get to instant cast that Enveloping Mist. I'm not tracking it on my frames, but you can see it up here. It's this Invoke Chi-Ji the Red Crane buff. So that's something I need to add to my weak auras. So it reduces the cast time and cost of Enveloping Mist. So that means we get 3 stacks of this buff, and then we press Enveloping Mist. We get 3 stacks of the buff, we press Enveloping Mist. And the way you get stacks of the buff is every Spinning Crane kick, you get 1 stack. Every Blackout kick, you get 1 stack. And every Rising Sun kick, you get 1 stack. So if you're trying to be resourceful, you do your regular rotation or damage rotation while Chi-Ji's active, and then press Enveloping Mist every time you have 3 stacks of that instant cast buff. And if you don't care about your mana and you're not trying to be resourceful, you're just trying to do as much healing as you possibly can in the shortest duration, then you just press Chi-Ji and start spamming Enveloping Mist on different targets every time. Just pick a new target every time you cast Enveloping Mist. And that's pretty much it for Chi-Ji. So next up is Thunder Focus Tea. The main use for this in Mythic Plus is basically just to get a reduced cooldown on Rising Sun Kick. So whenever Thunder Focus Tea is available, you should just be pressing it, and then just Rising Sun Kick. And then it basically lets you just do 2 Rising Sun Kicks. You don't have to really wait for the cooldown like you normally do. You can also use Thunder Focus Tea on Vivify if you're trying to save mana in a particularly long fight, or if you're just having mana problems. And then if you really need a lot of extra single target healing for whatever reason, you can use Thunder Focus Tea to buff your Enveloping Mist. But for the most part, default to just pressing Thunder Focus Tea and then Rising Sun Kick. And then lastly, we have Feline Stomp. So the way you actually want to use this ability is it puts this giant floor graphic effect on the ground. You want to make sure that you're standing in this, because when you're standing in it, you get a buff that every time that you cast a damage ability on Feline Stomp and do damage to targets, it has a chance to reset the cooldown. As you can see here, it reset the cooldown while I'm just fighting this dummy. So then we can cast it again, and then we're fighting again, and now we just got another reset. And as far as I know, you don't want to just spam cast Feline Stomp. Like, you shouldn't be pressing it every time it's up. It's more you're resetting it so that when you have to move to the next pack, or if the tank has to kite away, you can then follow up and then use another Feline Stomp to keep up with the mobs. So you don't have to press it nonstop. You can if you're just trying to min-max damage, but you want to make sure that you have a reset. That way you're not stuck fighting outside of a Feline Stomp. That's the main goal, is just always be on a Feline Stomp and hitting the mobs that you're fighting. And I think that's pretty much it for Mistweaver. So again, make sure you go check out Megaset's channel. It's super resourceful. It's literally the best thing you could do for Mistweaver information and stuff like that. And thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you're having fun in Dragonflight. See you later.